started with all of this. Welcome everybody to another episode of the Entertaining Stupid podcast and another segment of with my buddy. And this week I got my buddy Dan with me. How you doing today?
Not too bad yourself, Jason.
Not too bad, not too bad. And yeah, I got Danny on board here. And what I really want to talk to you, Dan, about is I guess mental health. Uh,
Yeah.
I think out of our friend group, you have the most experience, or maybe the most outward, I guess, experience with it all. Because I think it's generally
Mhm.
understood that in our group of friends that you've had problems before.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So was it like a lot of anxiety, depression?
Or you know what? Actually, I'll start it with how it all started, and then
Okay.
that's kind of the easiest way to go from there.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, without a doubt, like I've had in my history mental health, and it all started about first end of year one nursing, which would have been when I was 22, so 5 years ago now. It was year one nursing. I just remember year one nursing going. I went into school and it went really well. I was really into studying. I was staying late even after school. I'd go to the gym and then I'd stay in the library till about like 9 to almost 10 sometimes. So I would be really diligent. And I kept that up all of year one. And then at the end of year one, I even had a girlfriend at that point. And at the end of year one, I remember it hit me not exactly the end of year one, but pretty much in between year one and year two. It just started like I started getting the feelings in year one, but all it was is that you start slowly losing interest. And the best way to describe it is that in like say for example you get up and normally you say you're excited about, or at least in some way you're like, oh, we're doing something with my friends today. Say for example on a Saturday you get up, you're like, oh, me and my friends are gonna do this today and this, and there's always a bit of excitement that draws you that or makes you want to actually get up and do it. And the best way I can describe it is year one, in the summer, I just woke up like after I didn't, it kind of sneaks up on you, but all of a sudden, more and more, I was wanting to do things like the things I loved less and less. Like I'm quite a nerd, so I really enjoy video games, and I stopped enjoying them. Like I kind of just were playing them just for the sake of playing them, and it didn't hit me until like probably the end of the summer where I just through talking to my girlfriend too, I ended up she was the one that kind of opened it up and said, hey, do you think you're having a bit of problems? And like when she voiced it because she her actually I won't go into that, but essentially, but she voiced it because she knows people with mental illness.
Hmm.
And from there, I remember calling my mom after one lecture and just saying, I'm like, mom, I'm like, I don't think I'm happy right anymore. And she's like, oh, and like it took my mom by surprise because and I think a lot of people in my household by surprise because like until then I was really good at putting on a mask.
Yeah, you
Like I
were.
could always put on. Oh, sorry, cut you
Oh,
off.
no. It's fine. I'm just thinking like I'm agreeing with you. You
Mhm.
in a social environment very project outwardly a very charismatic type of person.
Oh, 100%. And so I was able to maintain that at least up until the end of first year. And then at the end of first year, I started having cracks where I couldn't keep it up anymore. And I found that more and more I wasn't having fun and all that. And after I talked to my mom, I got an appointment with my doctor. Went to go see my doctor, told my doctor how I was feeling, and then she ran me through a bunch of tests or a bunch of survey questions to see like how I would score. And needless to say, like I fell under the category of severely depressed, and so or clinical depression. And so she diagnosed me with clinical depression. She had me to go get some blood work done, and then we were going to start discussing about counseling and maybe potential drugs or things I could take that could kind of bring me back to step zero. Because at the moment, I'd gotten it wasn't the worst I'd ever gotten, but I was getting close to the worst I've ever gotten, where I was starting to have days where I'd stay in bed, like I
Okay.
wouldn't get up. I would stay in bed from I would say I don't know anywhere from I guess in the morning, like I would wake up about 11 and I'd stay in bed until 4 to 5 when my family forced me out for dinner, and then after then I'd pretty much go back in my room. And I remember that, and that was after like that was pretty much right before I started. I talked to the doctor, got to start on sertraline, which is an antidepressant, and then I started seeing a counselor at school that was relatively free, so it was really nice, and started going forward. And the best way I can describe it, depression, like in its entirety, for me at least, and at the moment when it's like hit me the worst, because that was like right after I saw my doctor was when I hit my worst. I
Hmm.
ironically like I got diagnosed, but from that point that was the moment I think was about 5 days after I saw my doctor, about 6 days after I saw my doctor, was when I had my first moment of like actual like a genuine like not it, I'd say I don't want to say suicide attempt, but like I was to the point where I was out driving for about 4 hours and just constantly kept passing the same bridge, like the same underpass. Like there was
Okay.
a huge concrete barrier, so I thought I'm just gonna hit it, right? I'll hit it hard. And I remember that was the lowest I ever gotten, and at that point, the best way I can describe it to you is that you get up and there's nothing. Like there's no, it's not, it's a sadness, but it's not a sadness. It's just that you don't want to do anything. There's nothing in the world that brings you any like anything. You're not interested in it. You don't care about it. Nothing could bring you out of like this. It's like a cloud. It's like a heavy, heavy cloud that just everything's dark. Everything's dreary, and yeah, like eating. You even start to stop to enjoy food. Like I really only ate to get full because I didn't want to be hungry.
Okay.
And of course, it's also a coping mechanism, right? So you start to drop onto that. But yeah, so essentially that was my beginning of my depression, the worst of my depression. And yeah, the best way to describe depression, you get up and there's nothing in the world that could bring you joy, happiness, or even make you want to care. You don't care about anything.
Okay. Okay. Now you kind of explained that your girlfriend at the time sort of saw like this turning point in your personality and everything like that, and sort of asked you if you're okay. Uh,
Mhm.
when you realized that there was an issue, was it difficult for you to try and seek help? I know there's a lot of sort of, I guess, stigma with like
Mhm.
mental health and stuff like that. Like, was it difficult to for you to, I guess, talk to your mother about it, or talk to a doctor about it?
Yeah, no, that's well put. And it's true. There's especially, and I know it probably is. I don't know, but I assume it's like that with women too. But I know, especially as a guy, or as a man, you look and you say emotions or anything like that is weakness, and to show weakness is to admit that you're not a man or you're not much of a man. And I remember my first thought was when I went to the doctor. She told me this. It's a mixed feeling because it's a weight off your chest because all of a sudden well, not all of a sudden it's still a process, but you kind of accept, you're like, well, maybe this isn't just me, because at one point you just think, oh, I'm a shitty person. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's just who I am. I'm just a shitty person. Everything shit. Like that's just who I am. And then when you give a diagnosis, you're like, well, maybe there's something else. Maybe I can fix it. And when you get that, that's nice. But then the other caveat that comes with that caveat is you go and immediately, like you said, I didn't want any one of my friends to know. I didn't want even my other family members to know. I just told my mom, and I just wanted it to be between me and my mom for a moment. And I remember with that, when it came to medication, I remember my girlfriend at the time. It was really convenient because she knew people and had a history with friends and family who had mental illness. So it was nice because she was very non-judgmental, and I worked my way into taking medications. But I had her. I'm like, please don't tell anyone. Like I don't want anyone to know this, right? Because you're embarrassed.
Yeah.
Because you think and you look to yourself, and I'll admit when I started taking the pills, I look back at it now and I think different. But at the moment, I took my pills and I go, well, I'm crazy, right? I'm mentally unstable. I'm weak. I'm just like I'm one of those people in society that needs to be helped along. Like I'm a burden.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember just thinking all that with I'm like, if I need meds just to be normal, like I'm fucked up then. Like and yeah, you go through a lot of mental gymnastics there, but eventually I was able to get kind of over it because it's kind of nice. At one point in depression, you stop caring about there's nothing, right? You don't care about anything. So at one point I was so low, that's when I remember, not when I got suicidal, but before that when I told my mom. It's just because I was so low that I didn't even care about the stigma anymore, right? You get to a point where you're like, you do afterwards when you start getting better, you don't want anyone to know about medication. But when you're that low, you just want to get anything to get this cloud, like off your shoulders or above your head.
Mm-hmm.
You just want to get it out of there. But no, I was able to open up to everyone eventually. But yeah, it's tough, and it's a definite stigma that as a guy too, you don't want to be seen as.
Yeah, yeah. You don't want to see as less of a man, especially when we're right around our age. Late 20s, almost 30. There, I think there's like a pressure where this is supposed to be like our prime, I guess years or something like that, where we're supposed to be at our best. And then when you stumble and facing something like that, it just feels like you're not meeting expectations. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I know, and it can kill you because you're raised that you will meet these expectations, and that's what a man does, right? And a man is strong, and a man doesn't cry, and all that kind of stuff, which is ironic because that's really suppression, and that doesn't help anyone.
Oh, it definitely doesn't. Now, while you were going through these bouts and stages of depression, like, did you have any sort of coping mechanisms to try and uh, help you get through the day?
Yeah. I think, and I understand it now, especially, and I like everyone has their vices, but even before then, my vices would have been probably video games, alcohol, weed, and then that's about, yeah, the three big, and food are like the four biggest vices I could say I have. And after I started getting sick, you know what it is, and I should have noticed the signs, because even before I went to the doctor and all that, I started going out less and less. I started taking less time for activity, like physical activity. I stopped working out so much. I didn't have interest that much, or I found excuses not to do things, and they came easier. And yeah, the essentially the whole time I thought to myself, I'm just not feeling it today. I'm not feeling it, but that ended up turning into a pattern. And eventually, I noticed that like I got to a point where for right off the bat, I jumped into mainly. Sorry, I'm getting convoluted. To
Mm-hmm.
jump back to your main point, I mainly jumped into right off the bat. Alcohol was the biggest one I jumped into, and then gaming. Those two combined, and like I did a bit of eating, and weed, but not necessarily a bunch. It was alcohol and gaming was the most. And I remember at one point my parents were gone at the cabin, and I was home, and this is after a point like, and this was right after like this is just the end of the year one summer. So like this is after I started getting medication and all that, and I think I went through something like 26 to 30 beer over the span of like 6 hours,
You finished
and I just
two cases of beer in
yes.
6 hours. Okay.
Yeah, so you know what it is, and the fact that the scariest thing about it is that I sat there and I'm like, that was easy. I didn't even like, I was shit faced at the end of it. Like I was definitely drunk, but I was like, that was too easy.
Yeah.
And I kept doing that, and I didn't think anything of it at the time, but I look back and that was definitely the worst of it. But I drank a bunch. I smoked more. I'd say at any given point in the day, I would have to be at least inebriated in some way. I'd have to be slightly tipsy, slightly high, um, or asleep. Those are the two like ways of like me be like I could, if I was conscious, I had to have something.
Okay.
And yeah, it was a moment of that. Actually, no, I shouldn't have said that 36 is like a normal day. That was the worst one I had, and that was kind of the turning point in the substance abuse. But that was the worst one I had, where that is what it got into. Like it was so easy for me.
Okay.
But yeah, drugs, alcohol, and then video games. I would game. Like remember when they left for a full day, I sat at the computer and drank for, well, like I drank for the 6 hours, or like over the day, like 6 hours was like total, but for the whole day I would spend anywhere from like 12 to 13 hours a day,
All right.
every day.
Mm, okay. Now, how much do you think like your environment and like the people around you sort of affected your mental illness?
Um, I would say the thing is that's funny, and I think a lot of other people with mental illness can look back at it. Not everyone, obviously, a lot of them have a sign or where it came from. But like my biggest like I look at my environment, my family life, or my family is one of the strongest and one of the like pinnacles. And I'm very biased, obviously, but is like a pinnacle of like a tight knit family. Like we always ate dinner together. No, we never no TV during dinner. We always would talk. We would always help each other. We none of us had bad relationships with each other. And like my parents give me everything, right? Like I lived a very sheltered life. I lived on an acreage. I had everything paid for. Like I still had to go and get a job and things like that. Look, my parents didn't completely pamper me, but at the same time, I had no real difficulty. I had a cabin,
Mm-hmm.
right? I went to all that kind of stuff. My family life was fantastic. The problem for me was the school life, and I didn't realize until later on. I think what it was is the environment that really kind of doomed me, or that set me off mainly, because it wasn't my family. My family was nothing but supportive. It was just when going throughout school, and I think a lot of like anyone, right? Almost every single person probably in existence has been bullied at one point or it's some way picked on. And I remember it was elementary school, and for me, like I didn't realize until afterwards. St. Philip's, where I went, was I didn't realize how bad we were like I'm not saying comparison. Everyone bullies, but like we'd bullied out of the school. Like kids had left the school because of it. Almost I think 7 boys by the time I graduated, like got to grade 8. So 7 boys were bullied out of the school,
Wow.
and something like 13 girls or something like 11 girls.
That's
11 to
quite the quantity.
right? And that's a lot of them getting bullied out. And I didn't realize how toxic that area was until like you kind of leave the high school and elementary school region. But I remember specifically, and for me, it was my weight. A lot of times it was my weight or glasses a little bit, but it was always weight. Weight was always the one that came back to me. And because I was at least funny enough that people could avoid like the I'm awkward or something, like I'd at least have that going for me, like a class clown.
Hmm.
But what always would happen is in that school, I figured out in that environment to almost survive, you'd shift guilt or you'd shift blame or you'd figure out someone else to what am I looking like a scapegoat.
Yeah.
You look at someone else and go, he's going to be the lightning rod that's going to take all this abuse. And I remember passing it on to one guy, and I won't say his name because that's I don't want to do him like that. But there was a guy in our school, and I remember everyone would say like if I hey Dan, like something about my weight, Dan's fat at the pool or take off your shirt, whatever, doesn't matter what it'd be. Every time I would take the comment, I would like internalize it, right? I'd be like, that's still shit, and then I would take it and I would deflect onto this other kid. It's like, oh, that's true, but have you seen so and so? Like he's even like I'm pretty sure he wears 2 shirts or something like that, right? So I would essentially pass the buck, and then he get the worst of it, and he got bullied out. I think at the end of grade 7. So he was my lightning rod, like my scapegoat for so many years. And I remember just afterwards, is the environment of just constant bullying and all that kind of just nature and ilk that eventually just like the best way to describe it is how my even my counselor described it to me is that through like how people have developmental cycles while they're growing,
Hmm.
like how when you're a kid you learn to think in black and white, and then eventually later on you're able to understand gray and the idea of concept thought, like concepts and all that. Like as you grow you're able to comprehend more and more of your surroundings and how like the world works and how
Yeah.
your mind is able to perceive. And the best way I could my counselors described it to me and how like my depression presents itself is that somewhere when I was younger, like this would have been probably between I don't know I and I he coins it in the grades of between the grades of like 2 to 5 or 6,
Hmm.
where I essentially since I was bullied to a point where my psyche took a break, and like the part of my consciousness that thinks in black and white took over, and I didn't really develop too well the gray area or the area that said, hey, this might be this or it could be this. Mine was just you were either like this, and my mind was working in one way. You were either fat or you were in shape. There was no in between. There was no, oh, you're a little bit husky and you could maybe lose 5 pounds, but you're not bad. No, to me it was like morbidly obese was fat. That was it, right? I was fat, and there was no other alternative. I was fat, and there I correlated being fat to being a loser or to being uncool or anything. So that environment and that mindset was really the biggest thing that essentially I've like kind of narrowed it down to, that led into me developing like depression later on, because eventually like the version of me that in that black and white mind, you make a version of yourself that you think this is the ideal picture of cool or the ideal person. You want to be this, and if you're not this, you're a failure. And I took in the moment I took my brother and I took Mike and I put him up on a pedestal and I said that's the ideal person, because he was really at the time he's very popular, very outgoing, and very well liked, was quite popular with women, all that. So I took that and I put on that mask and I tried to be my brother
Hmm.
through, because that black and white mindset told me that was how I was going to survive. So I took on the moniker a bit of like one aspect of I took on the moniker of class clown to be able to survive my school environment. But sorry, I got really long winded there. But essentially, that's what I think the biggest part of or my environment playing a fact was the school environment.
Okay, that must have been a very tough thing to go through, especially in the middle of right as sort of you're going through puberty. You're developing, your hormones are way off the charts, and just to have that sort of external stress and pressure of all of that affect you must have been quite something to go through. Um,
Hmm.
Now, you touched on sort of using humor to try and alleviate the situation.
Yep.
I find that a lot of what's going on currently is that if people do have sort of like insecurities or bits of bouts of depression or mental illness or something like that, a lot of people tend to go towards humor as sort of a mask.
Yep.
A lot of comedians I have issues with depression, but they're fantastic on screen and on stage.
Yep.
Someone like Robin Williams was quite a shock, I think, to everybody to see that he was going through depression and even though he sort of was this super funny, happy type of person that you see at events on screen and stuff like
Yeah.
that. How do you feel about sort of people using humor as a mask?
Yeah. No. And you're right. There's a lot of people. Like yeah, Rob Williams, and then even Jim Carrey's another one I know who has quite a history of it. And I think that the biggest thing with humor, I think sarcasm and comedy and just humor is general to mask it, is that humor is such a, I think humor is such a wonderful thing because it allows us to take anything, say, be it tragic, be it horrible, be it anything under sad, depressing, anything, and you can use humor to take the power out of it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
To the best of my like the best way I can describe it is that like so, say say for example you can kind of go through and a lot of times even in our own friend group you notice like we'll like even joke around and be like I want to die or something like that. Or it'll be like some like comment like that. It'd be like kind of dark, right? Like it sounds really dark, but the context it's put in. And or like someone would be like, well, you know what? If you don't do this, I'm gonna kill you. And then they respond like, oh, it's all good. I'm already dead inside,
Mm-hmm.
right? You come up with something like that, and no, obviously maybe some people are truly kidding, but I think that a lot of people, at least to probably a certain extent, struggle with their own demons, right? And so I think you say that, and all of a sudden you go, oh, I'm dead inside, and then you can take the seriousness out of it. You can add some levity to the fact that yeah, maybe you're struggling, but hey, you can make a joke out of it, right? Like you can laugh about it. You can, and when you laugh at it, it takes this like depression. It takes this gigantic cloud, this huge, and no, it's not the only thing. I'm not saying it's like the one key to getting over depression. It's not. Getting over depression is multifaceted, and you need a lot of different support mechanisms. But depression or comedy and humor is nice because you go that big cloud up there. You know, it's raining, right? It's raining heavy, and it's always raining. And instead of sitting there and just kind of sulking in the rain, you sit there and you kind of like start saying to yourself, you're like, well, this is just goddamn perfect. It couldn't get
Yeah.
it couldn't get any worse. I'm just sitting here. It's like, oh, why don't you just throw a tornado while you're at it? All of a sudden, you take your mind out of that big cloud, and that big cloud becomes more manageable, or it becomes less severe. I don't know if that's the best way to put it, but yeah, comedy is an amazing way to mask it, and yeah, like people like Rob Williams and other people that end up, for him especially, that he ended up committing suicide. I think that it's common with them too, because comedians, why I think they're so funny, is that they have such such a sarcastic view, or they're able to take their own difficulties, trials, and tribulations, and they're able to make them so humorous that everyone can find enjoyment in them, and so they can take their suffering and they can turn it into an art. And I'm not saying every comedian is depressed. I don't think that's the case, but I think that a lot of there's a lot of them that have a history of it. And I think that you take the power out of it when you can make a joke about it.
Okay. Yeah, you sort of, when you use humor, you sort of try and take control of some of the feelings that you're going through.
Yeah, yeah, you put it well. Um, you can take it and you can change the feelings.
Hmm.
So right, like, and I remember before, like I would view depression and go, oh, it's depression, it's terrible, it's why me, well, woe is me, yada yada. Right? You can think that all you want, but it's never gonna do you any good. And
Okay.
so when I started thinking, I'm like, well, I got depression. Shit, what do we do now? I'm like, well, we go forward and you make an example of it and you make jokes about it, right? Like I'll admit, and maybe I'm a bit guilty of this more than I should, but I do enjoy making jokes about, like, oh, I'm dead inside, it's all good, you can't kill me, right? Or something like that. But like, or how do you kill that which has no life,
Yeah.
or all that kind of stuff, right? Or and I like making fun of it because when I make fun of it, it turns it into like not like anyone would make fun of me, and not amongst like people would probably out in the world, but amongst my friends I don't have to because you like all of you guys have been very supportive, and I'm very lucky for that. But then I can take that depression, and I can and I don't want to quote it like Game of Thrones, but it is a pretty good quote. He's like, whenever you're insecure about or whatever is ailing you, he's like, make fun about it, turn it in like you joke about it, because then you take the power out of it, and you can wear it like armor,
Mm-hmm.
so it can never be used to hurt you.
Yeah.
And it's true. Like, and now I view depression. I go, well, it's depression. It is what it is. I got a chemical imbalance, and if all the pills were gone, I'd be fucked. All whatever, right? You can make any kind of joke you want out of it. But then at the end of the day, I get to look at it and I get to go, okay, I'm not depression with a side of Dan. I'm Dan who happens to have depression, but that's okay.
Yeah, it's not what defines you. It's just a part of
No,
you.
no, exactly. And I'm able to differentiate myself from it with using humor as well, right? I can take it away from myself. I'm like, well, it is what it is.
Yeah, yeah. You can separate yourself from it. Now,
Exactly.
you are on the path to recovery, I guess,
Yep.
is a way to put it. What are some small steps that you try to do either in your daily life or just in your routine that helps you try sort of get better?
Yeah, that's this, and also I'll admit you gotta stop me. I get long winded
Oh,
sometimes.
it's fine.
Okay. But I think right off the bat, the biggest one you need to know is that if you're like, for me, when I was at my lowest of low, and people can say all they want about, oh, just wake up and just like be thankful for the day. I'll fuck that shit. I'll fuck all that shit. No, I people that say that kind of shit, I go, no, no, no. Yeah, you in your perfect world, in your goddamn princess box. Okay, it works for you. For anyone who really, and if anyone ever actually listens to it, and even for myself, if anyone really does struggle or has any feelings of that, the best thing I can say is that seriously go in to a doctor and get and tell them how you're feeling, and see, maybe, and maybe they'll give you a questionnaire, right? Or maybe they think, well, you know what, we'll monitor this and we'll keep coming back to it. Or maybe they even suggest, well, let's maybe try with a counselor, talk to them, see what they think, get a third opinion. Because right off the bat, you aren't thinking straight, right? Like for me, I wasn't thinking straight. Like, right, I was thinking suicidal. That's not thinking. Well, that was, sorry, that immediate with depression, that was after. But still, at the time, you're not in the right of mind. You're in a different mindset. That's when you're out of it, you look at yourself and you go, what the hell? But in the moment, you can't see anything else. It's just like someone put up a wall of fog, right? You can't. There's no conscious like thinking of the future. There's nothing. You can't. So right off the bat, accept that maybe you have a problem, or there's something wrong, right? And then go and talk to a doctor, see what they think. Like for me, talking to a doctor was the only thing that really set me off on the right path right off the bat. Like obviously people around me, but me getting to the doctor and the doctor just telling me, just the fact that the doctor could tell me, I think you have depression. And she's like, we'll run you through some of this, these surveys. And after she ran me through a survey, she's like, you know what, you came up, I can't remember what the categories. There's a lot of questions she gave me, but it's something like out of 64 potential points, I got something like 62 or 61, right? So I was more of a severe case at the moment, but I think a lot of people when they hit rock bottom would probably be very close, right? Or maybe even doesn't matter if you get above like a certain number, they consider you.
Mm-hmm.
But she went in, and from there, just the fact that the doctor was able to tell me, hey, it's not you, it's something that's affecting you. Right, and just that able to separate the feelings from your person, you can take it and go, oh, maybe I'm not a piece of shit, right? Maybe I'm not like the guy who just wakes up and like I'm just a pessimist, right? I'm a pessimistic asshole. Like no one wants to be that guy, right?
Nobody wants.
So I would wake up and I would think, I'm like, oh, that's who I am. But then when she was able to tell me that was the first step. So truly, in my opinion, one of the biggest steps, because that's the one you need the most. And for me, I talked to her, and right off the bat, and maybe it's not for everyone, but for me, right off the bat, medication was huge. Because the me laying in bed, like people go, well, you know what? Maybe just get up and do some exercise. Oh, go fuck yourself. Go fuck yourself. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
I can barely get out of bed. You think I'm going to get out of bed and do a jog? Are you kidding me? Like, you might as well ask me to, just swim to the bottom of the ocean and back. No oxygen tank. You do it. No, I can't do it. It's impossible. And so I remember for me, it was the pills were that with combination of that and a counselor were right off the bat. That was all I was able to do. Counselor was even took me a little while because you don't even want to go to that. You're like, I don't care. What's the point? She's not going to help me. I'm still going to feel like this, or he, right? And I remember it was the pills got me from, I keep on changing my words here, but if you were to describe depression as a number system, let's say normal life is 1 to 5, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're feeling a 1 to a 5. Depression puts you at -3. So like you're negative on everything. You don't care. And so like for the pills, all the pills do for you is they bring you, for me at least, they brought me from -3 to 0 or to 1. They brought me to step 1. That's actually a better way to put it. But they brought me to step 1 where they went, hey, there's a slight sliver of light there. It's not much, but it's there, right? It's not complete darkness. And then from there, you're able to like build, just slowly start to build. And for me, the thing that really helped was, and I've actually told this to other people, the best way to describe it to yourself is you get a list. And this is only after you've even been on pills. Like, I'm not kidding. You can't do this when you're in the lowest, or at least I couldn't. But I made a list for myself. And physically, I wrote it out and I looked at it and I looked at the list and I said, things that I am bad at or things that I hate about myself, right? And if anyone is in depression or the lowest or anything, they know that it's really easy. You're really good at being critical of yourself, incredibly good. And so I wrote down everything. And then I took that list and I looked at it and you have to look at it. And the way I did it is I talked to myself, because when I thought it in my own mind, it was 10 times worse than when I said it out loud, right? And so I'd say the list out to myself, and I go down the list. I go, okay, number 1 on the list, weight, right? And I look at it and I go, can I change that? Is that something that I'm capable of changing, right? Even if it's little steps, is that something I'm capable of changing? I go, yep, that's something I can change. I put it in the one list, which means things I can change. And then the other list is things I can't change. The other thing I couldn't change, I sat there, I'm like, well, I wish I was taller. I'm like, well, fuck me. I'm not getting surgery. I can't do anything about that.
Yeah.
Right? That's it. That one's gone. And then on the other part of the list, I went, well, I don't like the way that my jaw looks. I'm like, well, other than surgery, can't really do much about that, right? Let's put that in something I can't change right now. I didn't like the way I didn't like the way I sounded. I'm like, you can't do shit about that, right? But then the other things, I'm like, I was fat. I'm like, I can change that. Laziness, I'm like, I can work on that. That's something I can change. It's part of me, but I can change it little by little.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing about that was money. I'm like, I didn't work enough, and when I did work, I called in sick. I'm like, I can change that. And all I did is I took the list and I essentially cut the list in half. I took the list that I couldn't change. I just threw it away. There's nothing I can do about that. I took the part of the list that says things I can change, and I picked each one. And I just picked the smallest possible goal for myself, like with the weight, right? I'm fat. I want to get skinnier. I looked at it and I said, what can I change? I'm like, well, I eat a lot and I'm hungry all the time. So I'm probably not going to stop being hungry anytime soon because I'm always hungry. And I'm like, but maybe I can change what I eat just a little bit. So not like drastic, because you can't do drastic, because you'll give yourself false hope and then you'll quit because you can't achieve a goal, right? And you'll become defeated.
Yeah, small steps.
But small steps. And I took the goal and I said, fat. Okay, let's just cut out pop for one, as you guys already know, for even to my day, my addiction to ginger ale. Like, I joke about it, but really, like, at least I'm decent at it now. I get diet, I get other things, but
yeah,
I love ginger ale. It's a serious
comfort.
vice.
Yeah. It's comfort.
And at the moment, when I was really depressed, I would drink something like 4 to 5 cans of something a day, every day.
Ooh,
so I'm like, I can cut that down, right? Maybe I do 3 cans. Maybe I do 4 cans. Even actually, you know what? That's not even true. I just cut down by 1 a day starting off. I said, let's do that for 3 days and see if I can do that for 3 days. I did it for 3 days and I said, fuck yeah. And I was able, and the thing is that you need that little step of pride. You need that little hint of pride, like you've done something. And then it's like almost like you're drowning, and then that's like a little footstep comes up, right? A little island comes up, but it's just enough for you to put 1 foot on. Mm-hmm. So you stand on that island and you go, okay, I'm still really unstable, and I don't have much room to move before I'm back in the water. But all of a sudden, then you make another goal, and you can achieve that goal, and then there's another footstep that you can put down, and then on the other end of it, I got to the point where I got scared, because you get scared of failure. I looked at the list and I said, you have to say to yourself, I'm going to succeed in some of these. I'm also going to fail. I'm going to fail probably a lot. And the best way I told myself is I'm like, look at it and truly, and when something happens, you don't get it right. I say I'm gonna stop being fat. I'm gonna have 4 cans a day, and all of a sudden I have 7. And I did do that, right? I failed stuff like that. That was genuinely a day I had. I looked. I'm like, okay, give yourself permission to fail, and then try again, and just say to yourself, okay, today I suck, right? Today I fucked up, and that's it. Today's gone, but tomorrow I can try again,
Yeah.
right? And then so essentially making a list, letting yourself have really small goals. Try to succeed in those small goals. If you don't, try your best. And this is the hardest thing, right? You can say it 10 times, but really try your best to tell yourself it's okay. I'll try again tomorrow. And even if you try again and fail again tomorrow, just say I'm going to try again, because you only lose when you stop trying.
Yeah. Yeah. I
So
I,
no, yeah,
I like what you're coming from. Like you worry about the things that you have direct control over, right?
yeah,
Forget about everything else. There's no point in worrying about stuff that's out of your control, because all that's going to do is just build up more anxiety, more stress, and that's just going to affect your depression even more.
yep,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
really
No,
cool.
oh, sorry.
It's really cool to think about it that way. Now I know you just briefly touched on, like, you listing out the things that you didn't like about yourself, right?
Yep,
So in your depression, you did have sort of like a negative self-image, or
yep.
self-hate. I find that when I go through my own personal bouts of depression, one of the key things that really, really hits me is, I still try to, yeah, I'm single. I still try to interact with women and, talk to them and, try get to the point where I could maybe ask someone out. Right. I
Yeah.
find that when I am in the sort of bouts of depression, a lot of the thoughts that go through my head is that, oh, she's only talking to me to be nice. Oh, she's only responding to me because,
Yep.
yeah. I just want to see, again, like, how do you feel about sort of those thoughts that go through your head when when you were in bouts of depression or whatever? Like, did that strain relationships, that put you in a spot where you were afraid to talk to people, meet new people,
Mhm.
and that kind of stuff?
Oh yeah, 100%. Um, exactly, you said. It's you get into your own head, and that's I think another thing with anxiety, even too, right? Is that you're overthinking everything so much that you sabotage yourself. And you're right. And like when I was in my low, yeah, 100%. Like even like and there's other factors, but ultimately I truly think that depression was one of the biggest reasons why like my last relationship fell out, because at one point the way I knew about depression was I was upset and I was sad, but I didn't want anyone to see that I was upset and sad, so I pushed everyone away. That was my way of defending myself. I isolated. And unfortunately, when you isolate with a girlfriend, she takes it, and who wouldn't take it as I don't like you, I don't want to spend time with you, right?
Yeah,
Because that's human nature. If someone says, "Hey, we're gonna do something," and then all of a sudden they ditch on you, and then they ditch on you again, and then they ditch on you again. Eventually, you're gonna go, "Well, they don't want to fucking hang out with me," and clearly that's so. No, it definitely strained it, and that idea, because I was hanging out with her, and my mentality was at the time, truly, is I'd say I'm like, well, she's with me because she thinks I'm a person that I really am not, right? I'm like I'm like, she thinks I'm this outgoing, funny, maybe like all that, whatever she thought I was, or whatever I like kind of built that character up to be. I'm like, I'm not, I can't put on this mask anymore. I'm like, she's gonna see through it, and she's gonna realize I'm really just quite a lazy, shitty person who doesn't have, who's quite over, like who's dangerous to being overweight. At the time, as ironic, I was like damn near anorexic, but I was like, I'm like, she's just with me because just for right now. She's gonna leave me any day now. And I remember I saw her at one point as a competition, and it's weird that like my brain truly went into the mode that said, if you don't beat her, not physically, God don't, not
no,
like
yeah,
not
no,
like no, I'm not like no, but if you don't compete with her and do better than her on majority of the stuff you do, she's gonna leave you for someone who can. And I viewed everything as a competition. So I would say, who has the more friends, who does better in nursing, who's better with patients, who gets along better with the nurses, everything. It was stupid, right? Or who gets more attention at a club. Also, like, I'm gonna win that, right?
yeah,
Like that's a that's a losing battle right off the goddamn, off the gate.
yeah,
Like I thought that shit was gonna work anyway, but I truly viewed it like that, and that strained our relationship heavily. And it got to a point where she asked me, she's like, "Do you even love me?" And I'm like, and I'm like, "Yes, I do," but I think I loved like a concept of oh, I'm able to achieve, because to me, I remember at the moment I looked at her and I went, well, this is like an example. This is proof that I'm not a complete piece of shit, right? Like I have a very pretty girlfriend, right? I'm like, this must mean that and that's and I'm like, this must mean I'm successful in some right. And then my fear was if she ever went, I'm like, well, that clearly means that I can't have a pretty girlfriend, which means that I am not in any way successful, which is a stupid fucking way to think,
Yeah, you're not
right? But that
desirable, you know.
no, but that's how the mind works, right? When you're in depression, it's not the rational mind. It's not it's a instinctual mind. And like you said, right? You think about it, and you're like, well, they're just with me, or they're just with me for this, or they're not. They don't want to be with me because of this, or even if they are with you, they're just with you because of. I'm like, yeah, it's true, and that sabotaged my relationship heavily. And then even in, like I guess more so, even Matthew would be the one to speak on this, but even like me and him, like our relationship got strained because we were best friends, hanging out all the time, like working out all the time.
Hmm.
And I didn't want to work out anymore, and I didn't really want to hang out with friends anymore. And so I pushed him away, and he got to a point where me and him would go out regularly. Then he just stopped. Like he would keep asking me because he's a nice friend, but at certain points, like I knew well enough that he stopped hanging out with me because I didn't want to go out.
Yeah.
And so, or if I did go out with him, I'd be like, you know what, he hates it. He hates being out with me. I'm not fun anymore. I'm not fun like I used to be. I'm like this. He doesn't like me for me. He likes me who the guy I tried to put on.
Yeah. I
So
think
yeah, you sabotage your own relationships.
yeah,
But
and I think especially around sort of when you're in that sort of phase, it's very telling of who your real friends really are. Like
oh God, it
people
is.
who
It
are just
is.
like invested in you no matter what. Because I mean, like as you said, you decided to push Matt away. You didn't want to hang out with him and stuff like that. But he comes back and constantly,
Oh
hey,
yeah.
you
Yep.
want to go out? You want to go out? Do you want to go out? And I think it's those types of people that you want in your life to
Oh yeah.
help you get over this kind of stuff, right?
Oh man, like no, you couldn't have said it better. And I remember, and like even to this day, I truly surround myself because I'm always cognizant of the fact that you need people like that. Like I had toxic friends at one point. I did, like people who would like we'd always talk behind each other's backs and shit. And even not with like them, and I had another crowd that would just drink heavily, always drinking drugs and anything and party all the time. And I had a few different crowds, and and you need to find the good people. And I remember with all my friends now, I can list, and I've done it before in a previous podcast, I can list every single thing about my friends that I admire and why I brought them close to me. Obviously, it's personality. Like, I'm not going to hang out with a bunch of duds right off the bat.
Yeah,
My friends have to be funny in one way or another, right? Like, they have to be entertaining. Not every one of them has to be, but really, every one of my friends, I have something about them that I admire and
yeah,
I want to emulate it. So I surround myself with people like that. So you constantly have a positive influence. And like you said with Matt, like, other friends, right? Like I did have other friends who completely left it. Just I dropped off the face of the earth. And then for Matt, I remember and oh, by the way, that's not like some underhanded thing. Never with you or like any of my regular friends here. But like in my previous group, I remember Matt was the one guy who kept asking me, and he knew my answer was going to be no, or I'd say yeah, and then I'd back out. Right? He knew that because I'd done it to him fucking dozens, 30 some up times, and he kept trying because as a friend he loved me.
yeah,
And I remember from there it was like that and kind of encouragement where you go, like when you get out of that mindset, you're able to really appreciate it, and you're able to look on those and go, okay, this is why I like them, this is why they're my friend, and this is why I'll do everything I can for them, right, to
yeah,
repay the favor that they've done for you by setting an example.
yeah. So you went and like reevaluated all the people that were around you or that you
Yep.
called friends, and you
Yep.
sort of decided that hey, these are the people that I can sort of cut out or maybe led to or feeds into my depression.
Yep, 100%. And I figured out the ones I needed to cut out, and unfortunately, I'm non-confrontational, so that doesn't ever go well because right, I'm trying to avoid the goddamn thing.
Yeah,
But no, I eventually just cut out more or less a lot of the people that that were didn't lead well, that turned me into either petty or a druggie or just anything, right? I didn't want that. I wanted someone that would push me.
yeah,
And so that's why, like, for example, like, you like pretty much everyone on the podcast, like, you guys are all my friends for a reason, right? I want to be surrounded by people who are pushing me in a positive direction because, especially depression, it's easy. It's real easy to slip back into that shit, right?
Yeah, and it's one of the things I like about this podcast is that
Mhm.
it gives us a chance for all of us to hang out and actually, speak to each other. And we're telling, stupid stories about the stuff that's happened to us for the week or something like that. And it's an outlet for us to sort of express our emotions, and
Mhm.
everybody else just sort of helps you try and get over them.
Exactly, and it's a nice forum because it's a nice way to get out into the open, and like you couldn't do this right if you didn't have friends who were supportive. You
Yeah,
couldn't do this around people who are judgmental because then you'd be scared of actually telling them shit.
yeah. Yeah. All right. We're getting close to the end here. There is
Mhm.
just one more thing I want to
Sure,
ask you. Are you afraid of relapsing?
100%. Um, am I? I'm aware that I'm constantly worried about relapsing, but not constantly worried. That sounds like I'm neurotic about it. It's I'm always no, actually, no, well, that's not far off. I am always cognizant. I'm always cognizant of if I stop trying or I stop really putting effort in, I will fall right back into the same person I was, right? And I'll fall back right, and like I still have lows. Like I that's the way I describe them to everybody, but I still have my lows, and I consider them like a mini relapse, right? Because it's not,
It's not as bad as before, but it's still a
yeah,
bit bad.
it's still bad. And the thing about depression, right, especially with chronic depression, it doesn't go away. There's no like, especially for me, eventually with my blood work too, they figured out that chemically my brain is off. So it's a combination of, it's a lot. Depression, so every time you're like, what's the cause? It's multifaceted bullshit, a lot of it. It's a lot, like, not bullshit, it's a lot of things put together. But um I'm always cognizant of the fact that if I stop eating well, if I stop going out, if I stop talking to my friend, socializing with you guys, if I stop, um, even in general, like if I stop being exercise, I know that if I stop these things that keep me afloat, and I should have mentioned before, my three pillars, and I call them that, of success, if you want to call them that, is I have diet and exercise.
Hmm.
That's huge, huge. And people who don't exercise chemically changes how you feel. There's scientific proof behind it. Exercise and diet is huge. Second thing I'd say right off the bat is counseling. Counseling is another big one. You need to talk to someone, right? Like kind of our podcast says, you need to have someone to vent to, someone that's a third party that's non-judgmental. And then the third thing you need is, especially if you're really low, is meds. And luckily in my case, I've gotten to the point where I'm off meds. I've been off meds now for almost a year, and I've been
Congrats.
successfully off meds, right? Because I keep those two other pillars active and I keep them strong. So if I for example, even this Corona threw me for a loop because all of a sudden the gym's closed,
Gym's
and all of a
closed, and
sudden and then the worst thing is, on top of, my counselor moved at the. I'm not kidding you. So I sat there and went, "Oh, here's my two pillars that are holding up my life, or my balance, and they are both gone, and now I'm just fucking free floating." I'm like, "Well, that's great." So it took me a while, and like I still had I remember when I was at my parents, I had a bit of a low, but never as bad, right? I just called them a bit of low because like before, I'd be in a low and I'd be in a low for a week. Now I'm in a low for a day, and I'm back the next day. And
yeah.
but yeah,
Are you
I'm
are
calling.
you
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, it's fine. Are you able to, like, when you do sort of hit these periods of lows, right? Are you like, do you look back and go, hey, at least I wasn't as bad as I was then, and then
100%.
still try and make, steps to climb out of that valley so that you can reach, your peaks.
Yeah, 100%. And the one other reason I think that's good for that is to keep a journal. I say this, but I'm actually quite a poor practitioner myself. Is you take a journal and you mark down, especially when you're low, when you're really low, you mark down when you're really low, and then you mark down every day, and you can really look back. For example, I can look back at a journal I wrote 2 years ago, and holy shit, right? Like I'm way different than I was 2 years ago. Like I still have lows, but my lows weren't like they were 2 years ago, right? And even 2 years before that would have been worse if I was journaling then. So that's kind of a nice way to be able to track it. And you can always reminisce and think to yourself, I know I'm doing better than last time, but it's also nice to be able to see it,
Yeah, I like
right?
how you touched on keeping a journal because as most people probably know, I went down to Seattle for the States there for about 4 months, and just
Mhm.
because I was burnt out and a bit depressed, and I wanted to get better. I started journaling then, and I'm still doing it now, and
Fuck yeah.
It's very, I guess, cathartic to be able to, put whatever the hell you're feeling just into words, onto paper. And even now, I find myself going back and looking at stuff that happened, back in October, back in
Yeah.
November, December, and going, all right, here are moments where I felt really shitty about myself. How
Yeah.
did I try and get over them? Right, and you can see the progression, and I think that's a very very useful I guess metric of
Yeah.
gauging your own depression and stuff like that. You just see sort of like the progress and the semi successes that you have as you go on and move about your daily life.
Yeah, no, you said it very well. It gives you a metric that you can really truly measure, right? Because you can always say, "Oh, I think I'm doing better," but how the fuck do you really gauge that? Unless you have photographic memory and know exactly, which would actually be a curse in my opinion.
Yeah.
Really, fuck, if you photographed everything, like I already relive all my shitty memories. I don't
Yeah,
need to.
that's what lying in bed, you're just trying to go to sleep,
Yeah,
and you remember something. You
yeah,
called your teacher mom in like the sixth grade or something like that, and it's like,
right. Oh, that can well, it makes sense, right? Because all of a sudden you have no distractions and your mind is able to wander. And when your mind wanders, it goes to the dark places really easy.
yeah, yeah.
But
Okay, all
no,
right,
yeah,
Dan.
well put.
Is there anything else you want to say?
No, man. I think that's pretty much it. Well, actually, you know what? I guess if like again for our God knows how many like 1 through 5 people that listen. Um, sorry, that always sounds insulting. I don't mean you know what I mean, but like just to, yeah, to
I
make a
mean,
joke.
we're being realistic here.
We're being realistic. I'm not trying to be a dick, but yeah. Anyway, though I will say our production value has increased tenfold. We're getting no thanks to myself. Anyway, but really, what I'd like to say is if anyone is listening that truly does have any feelings like that, right, and it can be anywhere in the spectrum of depression or anxiety, try talk to someone. Fucking talk to someone, please. Because like the best way, the world may be dark, but it's more or less probably brighter with you in it. So please talk to someone. That's it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thanks for joining me, Dan.
Hey man, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be able to talk to you about it. It's nice to yeah to be open about it.
Yeah, yeah. I really enjoy doing this entire series, just being able to sit down with my friends individually and sort of talk to them about what I think is sort of key categories that they can weigh in on.
No, I was gonna say it's a really good idea and genuinely like it, especially because I've done at least my own interview for like nursing. You're damn good at it. So no, I think it's a great idea.
All right. Thank you so much for joining me, Dan. And to everybody listening, we will be back with one more a series, the end here of the series with my buddy, and we'll be with Sylvan. So tune in for that, and we'll all catch you next time. All right. Bye.
But